Hi, I'm David Stoecker, and I want to welcome you to the Better Life in Recovery #Hope Dealer Movement podcast. As a visible and vocal member of the recovery community since 2009, I'm frequently asked questions and for advice from people all the time. Some are curious, some are still using, some are in recovery, and some people just care about somebody who's currently struggling with a hurt habit or hang-up. If people in my community have those questions, I guarantee that people everywhere are looking for answers as well. We started this podcast to give you answers and support, because not only is recovery real, it is amazing. Hope you enjoy the show. So today, Josh and I will be talking about stigma, which I think is something that unfortunately exists at a level far above what it should. I think there's this belief that because it is man-made, that because it's a choice, not man-made, but people believe it's a choice, that I think there's a lot of stigma towards it that there doesn't need to be. Because we have people saying things like, well, it's their choice to use. Right. You know, I always joke with people, and I'm like, yeah, it's our choice, why? And they're like, well, because you chose to use. It's because of the choices that you have that. To which I always reply, when I was in high school, I had to get a shot because I actually picked up a sexually transmitted choice. Right? That's good. Right. So, I mean, I chose to sleep with that person. Right. I chose to not use protection. And because of that, I got an STI. So that's a sexually transmitted choice. And that's an example, not that I did or didn't get a sexually transmitted infection when I was in school. We will not discuss that in a podcast. But it might have hurt at times whenever Anyway, so, yeah, not really something to laugh about, but it's the truth.
Right, sure.
But yeah, just like I always say, obesity, a lot of our cardiovascular diseases, 3/4 of the people that have type 2 diabetes, you know, these are things that people have because of the choices that they make in their life. Nobody, when I first started eating cheesecake, I wasn't like, I really want to have high cholesterol and a bunch of other problems when I get older. Exactly. But unfortunately, that developed over time. Just like I don't think anybody, when they actively use, especially at the very beginning, when I took that first hit off a joint and it numbed everything, and then the next night I met up with the same group of kids and I drank, and I found out that the more I drank, the less I thought about all of the trauma in my past. I was thinking, man, I want to stop thinking about all this trauma, right? That was my drug solution to my trauma problem. Right. And because of that, over time, I developed a substance use disorder, but I didn't actively choose it when I first started using.
Right. You weren't like, I hope I can burn my whole life down around me, right.
Oh, cigarettes, let me try one of those. Well, I hope I get lung cancer.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like, the definition of stigma is this. It's a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. And what got me really thinking about this was, I really don't want to give out too much information, but we were doing an event a few weeks ago, and we were talking about bringing some people in recovery to it, and the comment was made up, well, I don't want them around our teenagers that are at this event, and it's, that is just a blaring example of stigma. I don't want them around our teenagers, and it's a tough thing to hear, you know what I mean? And it's this idea that you are being disgraced because of this circumstance, because of the quality of person that they think that you are, not who you have become, or because of that choice, because if you have type 2 diabetes, I'm not going to let you hang around my kid because I don't want you to get hooked on cheesecake.
Absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, that's one of those things that happens all the time. Is we have people that are having taking some issue with us because of things that have happened in the past, and because of that, kind of like the Scarlet Letter. I remember reading that when I was a kid. It's something that you're branded with. And in a small community, which I would consider Springfield even a small community, it's a big town. Once somebody knows that you have a substance use disorder, everybody knows that you have a substance use disorder. And when people hear that, it's so different, from any other behavioral health condition. It's even, I look at alcohol. I mean, it's so much different from alcohol.
Yeah.
It's funny how we have normalized alcohol to the point that, if I were to go into work, not here, of course, or the recovery community center.
Right.
But say I were to go to work at, like when I waited table, or say I work in an office, and I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, that Super Bowl party, I was so drunk. Everybody would laugh.
Yeah.
And if I was like, oh my gosh, the Super Bowl party, dude, I shot up so much heroin.
Right.
I'm looking for a new job.
Yeah, totally different.
You know,
right?
It's completely different when people look at it. Even though alcohol kills more people than all of our illicit drugs combined.
Yeah.
You know, but yet it's so normalized, it's so accepted. And it's not that, now don't get me wrong, I don't want to say that there's not people out there that can't drink in moderation, but I know people that do meth and heroin in moderation.
Right. And that breaks your brain to even hear that said out loud, right? And why is that so normalized? Why is that so okay to talk about the bad decisions you made while you were drinking, and it's laughed at?
I would say because most of our liquor companies, have really good marketing and advertising teams.
Right.
You know, I've often said that I am so glad that, and I'll leave a name out, but we'll just say, I'm so glad that heroin doesn't have the same sales team and marketing team that our breweries do.
Right.
You know, can you imagine every time you turned on the TV seeing advertisements for black tar heroin? Or driving by and seeing billboards on the side of the road for China White?
Right. Yeah.
You know, we've got the best anhydrous methamphetamine in...
Right.
Alrighty then.
Yes.
Can I get some anhydrous light?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to sleep a little more.
It is. It's so true too, and it's even if we had that kind of marketing on our side, you know, where we could reduce that stigma and people could see that how much potential and how much life and how much stuff we still have to give back to the community. You know, for every one of the David Stokers out there, there's probably 100 more that are afraid to even talk about what they've went through because they're afraid of what they're going to be branded with, that scarlet letter like you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that's why we've got to be. Let me see if I can say this right. We've got to be more visible and vocal. You know, I think that's one thing that the recovery community has done really poorly, is we haven't been visible and vocal in our community. And because we're not visible and vocal in our community, they don't realize that there's so many of us. I mean, we literally, last stats I saw, 23.5 million people in long-term recovery, 22 million people with an active substance use disorder, which means we have more people in recovery than we do actively using. You know, recovery is, as Tom Hill says, recovery is the expectation, not the exception.
Amen.
Right?
That's awesome.
So, and it shouldn't. I'm not a unicorn. I mean, I work in a place where I'm constantly surrounded by people that are in recovery, but a lot of them still sit in meetings and they don't actively talk about it in the community, and I think that's where we fall short and we fail people.
I agree. I can't remember the last time I went and spoke somewhere where they didn't know who I was, and after I told my story that I didn't have someone come up to me and say, you know, I have an uncle or I have an aunt or a son or a nephew, someone that you wouldn't from the outside expect struggles with or had struggled with or was in recovery and currently in recovery and have that relation to it. You know, it's just, I feel like you talk about this all the time, that it knows no social boundaries. There's no economic, you know, discrimination. It chooses anybody and everybody.
No, see how white my skin is? I shouldn't have this.
Right.
You know, and yet that's kind of what we've done, though. And it's why alcohol, I think, is so normalized. Is back in the day, if you go way back, they tried to make it illegal, and all of a sudden we had a bunch of speakeasies and other things pop up and all these underground clubs. And it is it's a middle-class white thing. Middle-class white things, you know, I mean, it's okay.
Right.
You know, if you look at like what they've done with drugs, you know, I hate to say it, but I mean, marijuana. You know, when we first started hitting on marijuana, there was literally, they flooded the market saying, well, you know what, we really don't want people smoking marijuana because when white women smoke marijuana, they sleep with black guys.
You remember those commercials? Or like they had those like ads about it. Oh my gosh, it was insane.
Yeah, and then with opium. You know, well, we don't want opium to be legalized because then we're going to have white girls sleeping with Chinese, you know, with all these Oriental people. So literally, a lot of it started off with racism, and it's never gone away. Yeah. You know, when I talk about people being able to recreationally use heroin and methamphetamine, people laugh at me. You know, they're like, well, there's nobody out there that can. I've known tons of people. You know, I tell a story about when I was dealing meth back in the day. I had a couple, and they owned their own business. and 2 weeks they went on 2 weeks a year they went on vacation with their kids, and 2 weeks a year they took their kids to the grandparents. They did it every 6 months. They take their kids to grandparents. They come to me. They get an 8-ball. They get a 20 pack of needles.
Wow.
And then they would get high for 5 days and sleep for 2 days, pick their kids up, and then 6 months later they'd do it again. Now, I don't understand it. My brain doesn't understand it because I can't use it in moderation.
No.
But yet, I shouldn't assign that to everybody else.
Right. It's not true.
You know.
For me, it was just totally different. I remember I had gotten clean for a minute, and I had a relative come over and said, if you just sprinkle a little bit of meth in your coffee, it'll just give you a pick-me-up in the morning. No big deal. And so I thought, man, that's a good idea. I'm going to sprinkle a little meth in my coffee. I won't get hooked on it. And, years later, I'm overdosing, on heroin and crystal meth in Atlanta airport. So, yeah, and that's just totally different contrast to it. And I think when you think about the stigma that comes with it, a lot of times people see that part of it, that it's just like that. And it's...
Well, I think the media has been is responsible for a lot of it. Mm-hmm. The media never runs or seldom runs. They're getting a little bit better. But even a lot of times when they do run positive stories about people in recovery, it's still accompanied with all those, with police arresting people and a spoon underneath a fire with, a flame with liquid in it, or syringes.
Right.
I mean, even when they're talking about the positive side of it, they still couch it in all these negative images.
They do.
And I think that they're responsible for a lot of the stigma.
Right. Even, I think I saw an article, I think we were talking about it at lunch, where it's, you're catching it through your skin, people are overdosing and dying because they're getting high through their skin, and it's just...
Gray death.
It's just ridiculous.
Now we have this, suddenly we have this gray death, and it's absorbing through your skin. It's not absorbing through your skin. Trust me, none of us really dug syringes enough at the very beginning that we would have stuck needles in our arms if we could have just rubbed it on. I mean, it's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard in my life. I can't tell you how often I've played with various powders and never once overdosed from playing with powders. Never got high from it. It's weird.
Weird. It just increases the fear. Is what it does. And
it is, and I think they're trying to drive that, because now if I think that it might transfer through my skin, I'm going to be less likely to administer rescue breathing.
Right.
Or if I think somebody's overdosed, I'm going to be less likely to walk up and try to help them in any way whatsoever, because I'm afraid that it could kill me.
Yeah.
So basically what we're doing is we're continuing to demonize people that are in active use, and make it so that people are even more likely to marginalize them and look down on them and treat them as less than.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think that the Hope Dealer movement, this thing that you've started and that people are getting on board with, is this idea of reducing that stigma. I think about the Super Bowl party we had on Sunday. We had over 100 people here enjoying a great time, sober event. We got to watch the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, and
and people actually brought their kids. It was weird.
Yeah.
And nothing. Yeah, we actually provided free childcare for their kids.
Right.
And some of the kids watched it with us, and nobody was baiting the kids or picking on the kids. And another thing that people might find weird is we had probably 80 people. I mean, because maybe 20 of them were spouses that might not have had substance use disorders. So we had probably 80 or 90 people that were in recovery. Yep. Some not very long, some a lot longer, and who knows, some of them might have used within the last day or two. I have no idea.
Right.
We had 0 fights, nobody raised their voice, 0 disagreements.
Yeah.
Even though we had Niners fans and Chiefs fans.
Bandwagon.
We're going to talk about that. You know what? I get everybody loves a winner.
Yeah, true story.
Which is why we need to be more vocal about our wins in recovery. I'm going to tie that in.
That's good.
And then everybody can jump on that bandwagon. So maybe if there isn't that bandwagon that already exists, we can create one.
Yeah, and I love that.
But there was no fights, there was no problems, there was no nothing.
It was a great event, And you think about that, I think about this idea, the stigma that comes along with it, and how many fights and how many altercations and how many bad decisions were made at the local restaurant over that same Sunday evening, in a position, in a spot where there was no stigma.
Yeah, but that's okay, because we just kind of pushed that one off to the side. Well, he had a few too many beers. I mean, he got a DWI, no big deal.
Yeah, right.
But what if he would have been driving at the wrong place? Family would have came through, Because then we demonize on the other side of it.
Yep, we do. That's so true. What is it? Maybe you can answer this. I was just thinking this. What are some things that we can do, us in recovery, to reduce that stigma?
I push the envelope a little bit. I know there's some people that still disagree with the use of recovery language. And that's fine. Personally, when I refer to myself as a person in long-term recovery. I never call myself an addict. I wasn't a substance abuser. I never abused substances. In fact, I love them more than just about anything. I abused everybody else in my life and everything else in my life, but I treasured and valued that. So that really doesn't define who I was. I didn't have, like I said, I didn't have a drug problem. I had a drug solution. Abuse also, when you talk about abuse, it kind of looks at something negative that was done to somebody. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, drug abuse. You know, this is, it takes some of the onus away from the disease itself. And I know there's some people that don't like it viewed as a disease. I get into arguments with people all the time. Mostly with people who have Christian beliefs. They're like, well, it's a sin issue. And I'm like, okay, so is obesity. And yet people still go to doctors. So is lung cancer for people that smoke for 30 years. So is, you know, type 2 diabetes. And yet I don't see it treated the same way. You know, we'll just pray it away. Okay, pray it away. You know, I fully believe in prayer. I believe in the power of prayer. But I believe maybe, hey, pray with me and then I'm going to go get some help.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That's how we treat everything else. And yet it amazes me how little compassion comes from so many people.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you see, like, I think we've talked about this maybe on other podcasts about, you know, that overdose spike we had and just the venom that was spit out on social media.
People suck.
Right? And it's like we're talking about people's lives and keeping them alive so they can find recovery, you know? Had I not been Narcan, had you not been Narcan, you know, we wouldn't be here having this podcast right now.
I had a mom find my number and call me in tears during that spike. Because she was in the ICU with her teenage daughter who had been dumped out unconscious in her front yard and was on life support, and she didn't know if her daughter would ever come out of it. She was in a coma. She had no idea if she would ever talk to her daughter again. And she was on Facebook and was reading an article and then started reading the comment. She just called me in tears. Because she read, who cares? Just another dead junkie. You know what? Psh, we don't care if these people die. Why should we help them? I mean, all these negative, horrible things that we've always heard. You know, let's give it away for free so these people can eliminate themselves from the gene pool. That's somebody's son. That's somebody's daughter. And it's amazing how compassionless people are. I don't care if you believe in tough love. You know, I give you every opportunity to be wrong in your beliefs. That was kind of a joke. But anyway, when I have to tell you it's a joke, I know everybody else is going to need to hear that too.
I get it right now. I got it.
But, you know, because there's two opinions. They said there's three. There's really two. There's mine and then people that are wrong. You know, but the truth is, like I tell people, read the book Beyond Addiction. You know, if you struggle with compassion care. I had somebody literally, I posted an article about how compassionate care works better than tough love, and somebody was like, well, tough love worked great for me, blah, 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 blah. So I posted my anecdotal, well, somebody found me, you know, unconscious with both my wrists slashed after they tried tough love, and then somebody else commented, well, who cares that you threw a temper tantrum when somebody told you that you had to stop using drugs? And all I could think was, man, for my sister that walked in and found me dead and had to call an ambulance that declared me dead when they got there, and then had to give me blood to bring me back because I'd lost so much blood, I bet that wasn't a temper tantrum to her.
No.
You know, and to have so little compassion that you would call somebody's suicide attempt a temper tantrum?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I really hope, I think in my reply, I was like, I really hope that people treat you with more compassion than you seem to feel towards other people.
Yeah.
You know, because I'd never wish any evil upon anybody. But sometimes when I read some people's comments, it's hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I hear how people feel about people like me and the people I care about, it's really hard.
Yeah.
You know.
I agree. And you know, even hearing that, I almost kind of left me speechless for a second, you know, that, such a heartless
Oh yeah.
thing. And when you think about it, people look at somebody that's struggling with substance use, that's struggling in that lifestyle, that they're the ones that don't have any compassion, that those are the ones that are stealing, those are the ones that are taking. And it's the case is that they are just looking for an answer the same way that anybody else is in this world. And unfortunately, they've chosen those drugs and those alcohol is that they're searching for an escape. They're searching for an answer. They're searching for hope. And what they don't need to hear is that you're a loser, you're a junkie, and you're better off dead.
Yeah. And the amazing thing is the person that posted that, I'm pretty sure that I remember a time when they didn't have their children because their children had been removed from their house because of their chaotic use.
Wow.
And yet that's the way, that was their way to comment. And you know, there was the one part of me that wanted to comment, well, you're fortunate. I guess they never should have given you your kids back then. You know,
Right.
I mean, why not be mean back? Oh, because that's not in me. But you
Right.
know, I mean, people showed you grace. Actually, I think that's what I said to her
Uh-huh.
is I'm glad people showed you more grace than you. No, I said you show people grace your way, I'll show people grace mine. That's what I said. Because to me, I've been shown grace because I've had lots of issues, both mental health, substance use, tons of things in my life. And a lot of people have shown me grace or I wouldn't have the life I have today.
Yeah.
And it's so easy for us to stand back and forget where we came from and show that hate to other people.
Yeah.
And forget all of the grace we've been given by other people. You know, not to mention if you have a faith,
Right.
you know, the grace that we've been given there too. So
It is. And I think what we've got to do in the positions that we are in is you know, hope dealers, is not let those types of things deter us to keep pushing forward with this idea of reducing stigma.
and not to throw hate at somebody's hate.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
because that's always my snap reaction. In fact, sometimes I literally type in a reply just to get it out and then delete it. Right? I'm
a
like,
good
I
idea.
can never send that.
Right.
But man, sometimes it pulls at my heartstrings because I know the people that are on my page. I know the people that are on my Facebook. I know the people that read the comments. And some of them, that's not something they need to hear.
No.
You know, some of them, their loved ones, I guess, have thrown that temper tantrum and are dead now from throwing that temper tantrum.
Right.
You know, so why not instead be as gracious as possible with people? I feel like social media has almost killed that.
Yeah, it has.
You know,
It has.
I think it's so easy to be heartless and compassionless online.
Yeah, it is, because it removes that physical boundary, you know, and you're not there face to face. It's that digital version of yourself.
Yeah. I remember back in the day, you'd be like, oh yeah, say that to my face. Well, now you don't have to worry about it.
No, not at all.
I may never see that person again.
Ever.
So I
Right.
can say whatever I want to.
Yeah.
But the truth is, you have no idea. At least if I'm sitting there saying something to somebody in person, I know the people that are around and the people that are listening and how it may impact them. On social media, I have no idea.
Yeah.
And I think that also drives stigma.
I think so
It's
too.
really easy to be heartless and treat people with venom and hate when we're doing it on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. Now, I realize that there's agitators and there's uniters, and there needs to be both a lot of times. I'm a uniter. I will probably never be an agitator. That agitation, that was so much part of my addiction. That anger, that venom,
Right.
the
Yeah, me too, man.
the animosity sometimes, the animus that you got to have sometimes in order to be an agitator, where I would rather work to bring people together. And I think that's why I try to walk that tightrope between harm reduction and recovery, and that tightrope between faith and recovery, you know,
good.
so that maybe I can help bring both sides together.
Yeah, that makes all
You
the
know,
sense in the world.
I mean, I call people out, but it's more low key.
Yeah, you
You
do
know.
though, and I think it's good because you do it at a point to engage in conversation and bring unity, and it's never that you're stupid, don't talk to me anymore. It's never like that. It's to create unity, and I think sometimes confrontation like that's necessary, and I think it's necessary to reduce the stigma as well.
Right.
Totally agree with that.
And for me, it's more posting articles and studies and hitting people with, you know, and trying to engage people in conversation instead of alienate people. And that's the way I do it.
Yeah.
Other people can do it however they want to, you know. but I know what works best for me. Mm-hmm. And other people knows what works best for them. And the difference a lot of times is I see people that do their thing, and they're like, well, if you don't do it this way, I'm surrounded by a bunch of people, and all day blah, 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 blah is blah, blah, blah. You know what? I thank God that there's people out there that interact in ways differently than I do.
Yeah.
And you know what? Some of those people, they don't invite me to work with them, and I'm fine with that because we have different approaches.
Absolutely.
Now we may find ourselves next to each other and things, but they're not like, hey, David, come over here and help me bash this place, because they know that's not what I do. So they do their thing and I do my thing, and on occasion our things will intersect. But sometimes we don't need both.
Right, you don't.
You know.
And I think it takes a lot to be able to step back and say that my way isn't the only way. Obviously you're big in your faith, I'm big in my faith, but when it comes to pursuing recovery, when it comes to pursuing life, that path doesn't always look the same, and it's it takes a lot to be able to step back and say I'm okay with that, and I help reduce that stigma.
Yeah, we've got to figure out ways to reduce it. Period.
And I think one good way is people sharing their stories, and I think being a part of this Hope Dealer movement, people talking about what they've been through, and so others can understand what it's like to walk through this, and also understand the hope that comes out on the other side once you have experienced true recovery.
And maybe that's what we talk about next week, is we talk about how to effectively share your stories that has the ability to impact people instead of marginalize and push people away.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's what we do, is talk about ways that I can talk to people and present my story in a way that educates instead of glorifies.
Glorify war stories, all that kind of stuff that comes along with it. Yeah.
Because I guarantee there's pieces of my story, my book.
Yeah.
The very first chapter of my book is one of those, you're going to hate me after you get through reading the first chapter.
Yep.
I think that was done to draw people in, and show them some of the ugly side, because there is definitely some ugliness in it. But when I have an elevator speech, when I have 1 or 2 minutes to talk to somebody, when I have 3 or 4 minutes to talk to somebody, how am I going to present myself so that they want to continue talking to me?
So good.
How am I going to talk to you so that you want to engage me later or engage with me more? Right?
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think it's a great idea. I love that.
Okay.
Idea. Yeah.
So let's wrap this one up. And in 2 weeks, I think we will have a discussion, depending on how these get edited and thrown in. I think next week will be a 10 questions, and the week after that will hopefully be how to share your story if these are edited right.
Yep.
And if they're not, then I'm not going to complain, because my editor is amazing and she does something I can't do myself.
Right.
So thanks, Julie, for all the editing you do.
Way to go, Julie.
And with that, I hope you all have an amazing week. And don't forget, take every minute that you have to show compassion with people. I always say this: if you're living your life to make yourself and the people around you lives better, if I'm living my life to make my life better and help the people around me become better, then I'm doing something right. If I'm not living my life that way, then I'm living my life wrong. Period.
So good.
So keep dealing that hope. Keep sharing the positive side of your story. Let people know that not only is recovery possible, it's amazing. Any last...
Right. I think that's it. I think that recovery is not just about being sober. Recovery is about creating a life, and a life that matters. It matters not only to you, but those around you as well.
In closing, I just want to thank you for listening to the podcast. Please join us every week for new episodes. If you want to connect with us further, if you have any questions, topics you'd like to hear in the future, or maybe you would like to be on the podcast sometime, you can connect with us at betterlifeandrecovery.com. There's the Better Life and Recovery page on Facebook, or you can, we're on Twitter, BLIR_NPO. Also, this podcast is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about the network at studiodna.media. Thanks a lot. Y'all have a great week.